Welcome everybody to the February 6, 2025 Parking, Traffic, and Safety Meeting. Charlie, would you please call the roll?
Mary Lou McElwain.
Here.
Jane Mitchell-Pate.
Here.
Mark Syracuse. Here. Erica Wygonick.
Here.
Deputy Police Chief Mike Maloney.
Here.
Public Works Director Peter Rice.
Here.
Stephanie Casella of the Planning Department.
Here.
Dave Allen.
Here.
And Chairman Andrew Bagley.
Here. And the first thing we have is the annual selection of chair. So I would await a motion.
Motion to elect Chairman Bagley to be in the chair,
And a motion also for the vice chair would be.
and Erica Wyman. You want to do this? She's the vice chair?
Sure.
All right, and can we have a vote? And I think Eric and I will recuse.
I'll second both those nominations.
I'm already fumbling it.
That's right.
All,
So inexperienced.
yes.
You're 2 months off.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any recusals? Recuse? And any opposed? Okay. And just before we start with public comment and the financial report, I want to welcome Jane Mitchell, our newest member. And I did want to give a brief note. I unfortunately have a call with Singapore and Finland at 9 o'clock, so I'm going to have to duck out of here in about 25 minutes.
Give them our best.
Yes. Could we have the financial report, please?
If I could, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce a new member of our operations, Jefferson Lane. Jefferson will be taking over Tyler's role, and he will be providing support to the committee.
Excellent.
So please welcome Jefferson.
So what's-
Excited to have him here.
What's Tyler's new role?
Back to what I used
Continues
to
to
be.
go back to what he... yeah.
Engineering.
Keeping the city running.
He sheds one role. Goes back to one role.
Okay, do we have any questions on the financial report? I would look for a motion to approve as presented.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Public comment?
Good morning, committee. Tyler Garzo, 62 McKinley. I'm here to talk about Route 1 again. NHDOT seems prepared to spend $20 million on Route 1 between Market Basket and the fire station. They're adding multi-use side paths on either side, as well as about 3,000 feet of automobile lanes. I'd like the committee's support in lowering the speed limit on this increasingly residential section of road from 35 miles an hour to 30 miles an hour, as it is in Hampton. RSA 26560 does allow for this, as hazards will exist that require lower speeds for compliance. That's the language in the statute. I know this is outside the urban compact, but the city's opinion still matters both to NHDOT and to our state representatives who can force this sort of change to happen. Generally speaking, it's inappropriate to support or spend money on bike and pedestrian infrastructure without actually making the road safer and more pleasant for bikes and pedestrians. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll look into that. Moving on. Let's see. We don't have any presentations.
Is there any public comment on the?
Oh,
No attendees at this point.
let's see. New business, 293 Maplewood Avenue, driveway permit requested by resident. Sample motion moved to conduct site visit and placed on March meeting agenda.
So moved.
Second?
And I think we have 2 site visits that we're
Yeah.
asking for in this agenda, so hopefully we'll be able to schedule them on the same day. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, item B, Chapter 7, Article 5, Section 7.601, limited hours loading zones. Request to change loading zone hours on Penn Hollow Street to allow public parking starting at 3 p.m. Mondays through Saturdays by Chairman Andrew Bagley. And the sample motion is moved to change loading zone hours for Penn Hollow Street loading zone from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. Mondays through Saturdays, and 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. on Sundays. If I get a motion and a second,
I'll motion
I'll speak
that.
to it.
I'll second.
All right, so what we did, if you guys remember, about a year and a half ago is we moved most many of the loading zones downtown, we opened up for parking. And what we've seen is it's worked really well for the most part. And most of the people that park in the loading zones are locals and residents because they're the only ones that know that this loophole, if you will, exists. So it does two things for the city. One, it gives us more parking where we need it downtown, and it generates additional revenue. So it's kind of a win-win. And it doesn't seem to have interfered with deliveries at all. So this is one additional area where I think we can get some benefits of additional parking supply without causing any kind of undue traffic issues. Erica?
When we made the switch for the other loading zones, we had some data about when people were using the loading zones, and I thought we had moved all the ones that could be moved. I mean, I'm fine with the idea. Do we have data for this location?
Yes, yes. This is one of the loading zones that we do have the data on, and it was consistent with the other ones around town. That
Okay.
it was after 3 o'clock in the afternoon, there's very little loading activity.
There was a request from one of the business owners downtown that we hold off on this particular loading zone because of the outdoor dining and everything. But now that we've seen that it hasn't caused any issues elsewhere, I think it makes sense to move forward with this one. And to that effect, I would say, you know, if we see other opportunities where we think we might be able to recapture some parking, let's do it.
I agree. Thanks for that context.
So businesses are informed of these changes too? Businesses involved on Penn Hollow?
We generally don't inform them. We're adding parking, which is generally, most businesses don't usually have too much opposition to this. And if it does cause a problem, I'm sure they'll bring it to our attention.
But that's after the fact. I was just informing them,
If I may.
considering.
Yeah.
One of the things to remember is that this is a temporary measure, and we have the ability to go a year until we do the omnibus. So it is we do have an opportunity if there's pushback to make adjustments and to pull it back out. So.
Okay.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. C, Bow Street, request to remove parking space to allow for monument of Royal Governor Benny Wentworth tomb by Portsmouth Historical Society, and the sample motion is moved to conduct a site visit and placed on the March meeting agenda.
So moved.
Second?
And I don't know if it was 100% the Portsmouth Historical Society or somebody that does the tours for the societies, but basically they do a walk-around tour in town, and there's the Benny Wentworth tomb, but there's a parking space directly in front of it, so you can't actually see the tomb. So we'll go there and evaluate and see if it's worthwhile to give up a parking spot there. And if we could schedule that at the same time as the driveway permit one, that would be ideal. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Old business, State Street, request to eliminate parking space at 481 State Street by resident. Sample motion, move to eliminate the parking space in front of 481 State Street and to add the first two spaces on the opposite side of State Street, west of Middle Street to zone 1507.
What was the history of that?
If we can get a motion on the floor, then we can get a
So moved.
presentation.
Second?
Eric, do you want to?
Yes, this request came in from the residents. You can see these 3 buildings here in a row. It's the residents of this middle building here have their driveway, and it's very difficult to get out of their driveway when vehicles are parked in both of these parking spaces on State Street, because the spaces are only 15 feet long. They're very short, very small parking spaces. Oftentimes, cars will hang out on one side or the other, and it just makes it extremely difficult for them to see oncoming traffic when they're pulling out of the driveway or to turn in or out of their driveway. So they've requested that this first space here, closest to Middle Street, be eliminated. That way they can get in and out of their driveways easier, and it's safer, and it also makes it consistent with, instead of getting rid of the middle space, you would get rid of the space closest to Middle Street, and you'd have a no parking zone from here to corner. And that would help their driveway situation, improve the safety near the intersection. And then we have these 2 spaces here, which we recently striped. They didn't used to be striped, but when we repaved the street, we were able to gain a couple more spaces. So it would be looking to add those to the zone 1507 to make up for the loss of this 1 space over here.
Mark?
The house to the left has the same But they're not voicing their concern?
No, what they have a wider driveway here, and the space is a little bit longer, so it's not as critical of a need for them. They can get in and out of their driveways. It just seems to be this particular driveway. They have very short spaces on either side and a very narrow driveway.
So where you're pointing right?
Oh, this one here?
Yeah, that one here, it looks the same. Mm-hmm. So,
But they do have a longer space here, so that usually if there's one car or the other is hanging over, they can maneuver around it, so it hasn't been an issue for that driveway.
They also have a full parking lot in the back to turn around and come out head first.
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
yeah, they have more spaces back here.
You're also closer to that intersection where that car could be coming off of Middle and turning there, so it's.
Yeah, this right turn, they're
makes
coming
that
in
kind
here.
of blind.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mary Lou?
I just want to make a comment that this is very similar to the West End issue that we brought up, I guess it must have been in November, that these issues come back to us after the fact. And I get it, that it's all planning department, but they do come back to us because of safety issues of drivers trying to pull out of parking spaces onto a main street. So I don't know how that gets fixed if we get involved in that and the planning end of things, but we do see that. And especially the West End, that was pretty considerable that development occurred without consideration for safety, exit, and entering in that space, and that's very,
These houses have been there they're not new, are they?
No.
what?
These houses have been in place for,
No,
I'm just talking in general.
She's
In
talking
general, that these things
similarity.
come back to us
Yeah.
after the fact,
I mean,
so that it's suddenly an issue here must be more,
I think
Parking.
historically, cars have just gotten longer and longer.
that's true.
And now what might not have been an issue 10 years ago is more of an issue today.
Yeah.
But I look at this as a win because we're losing one space but gaining two.
Gaining two.
So a net of one.
Right, right.
And before we vote on this, I'll just speak. There's a number of, let's say, orphaned parking spaces throughout the city. We just had a very large parking study that was approved by the council last meeting, which I don't know, have we distributed that to the PTS?
It's online, and we've referenced it to the PTS a number of times.
So there's a very scientific study that went through and looked at all of the parking in the city, both from a permitting and a zoning and paid parking and parking for development. Like it covers just about everything you can possibly imagine. So there may be more adjustments over the next few months as we look at what their recommendations are and
Yeah.
and figure out, what the best use of our inventory is.
All part of the parking utilization?
Yes.
That's
yep,
right, yeah.
So I think it's 162 pages.
Yeah.
So there's
But
a
there's
lit
It's a lot
to
to
chew
go
on there.
through.
There's an executive summary with a matrix of recommended changes, so.
Mark?
did this come up through the study, or was it brought?
No,
forth
this
by
was
the
brought to us
resident?
by a resident.
So this is very specific. It reminds me of Court Street a couple years ago, when someone was having a hard time getting in and out of their driveway because of the parking from the neighbors. And what we did, what Steve Pecci mentioned back then, was setting a precedent that
We don't set a precedent with this. We look at it case by case. We've had people come to us before, and we've said no. And we've had people come to us, and we've said yes.
Yeah, we
This
said-
one, there's enough things,
Right.
especially with it being close to a busy intersection,
tightness of it.
that it kind of makes sense.
okay, so it's case by case. and
Yeah,
there's
we
no-
don't, this is not we're going to do this if somebody requests it. We're going to evaluate each one on its independent merits. Any more discussion? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? C, Junkins Avenue at Pleasant Street, concerns regarding the site distance looking up Pleasant Street by resident. Sample motion, move to place item on file.
Move to place on file?
Second.
Eric, do you want to just speak briefly?
Sure. If anybody who's driven down Junkins from here, coming out to Pleasant Street, has seen that, when you get to the stop bar, you stop for the pedestrians in the crosswalk, but then you still can't see to your right because of the fence and the tree.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's typical of a lot of intersections like this in the city where you stop, make sure there's no pedestrians in the crosswalk, then you pull forward, block the crosswalk, and you can see to your right unobstructed once you get past the fence. At that point, you're still not out into the travel lane on Pleasant Street. So it's a workable condition. It's just, you have to take it in two stages. Stop first for the pedestrians and then pull out to see if any traffic is coming. So it's workable. It's not something where we're going to want to cut down a large tree or move a fence on private property just to make it a little bit easier to see from the stop bar. So I don't recommend any changes at this location.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, and now C, Broad Street, request for traffic calming measures by residents. And if I can get a motion for discussion, move to place item on file.
Move for discussion?
Second.
Second.
So we had a number of residents from Broad Street come because they have concerns about the speeds there. Do you want to speak to the data we collected?
Sure. We've recorded speeds, done speed studies on Broad Street several times over the years, and we consistently see average speeds in around 25 miles an hour, 85th percentile speeds up around 28 to 30. So, for a roadway of these characteristics, and it's not exceeding the legal speed limit of the roadway, and it's, but, for residential area, you desire to have traffic at 20 miles an hour, which that's why it's posted at 20 in an effort to get traffic to slow down. But, due to the characteristics of the roadway, it's not a very realistic speed. So the data is not showing that there's legally a speed issue out there, but from a neighbor's desire, you'd like to have the speeds a little bit lower.
Erica?
I get it, but that road also feels really overbuilt, right? Like, I assume there was a trolley that went down that road at some point in time. It's just so wide. I'd like to think, it doesn't feel like a residential road. It feels like a big road. And are there places we could do bulb outs or something to tighten it up in some places?
You could, that would be the way to do something, is to physically make changes to the roadway, the curb alignment, and
install chicane to just make people.
Break up that straight shot that it allows
Straight
higher
wide.
speeds. Another issue is that there's not really a lot of traffic on it, so you don't have oncoming traffic that you have to stop and yield for. So even if you did a pinch point or something like that, you could just shoot down the middle of the road still at speed. But something like that would be the way to go, is to try some physical measures to break up that straight line.
Maybe we could do like a pilot in the spring?
So my thought was, because they were fairly well organized, was to go back to the group of neighbors who brought this to us and say, can you get a sign off on the vast majority of Broad Street in that section that you want us to go forward with something? And once we have the full neighborhood on board, if we can get that, then we would evaluate what possible measures there are. I don't want to go, and we have done in the past where I think it was on Dennett Street, where we were going to do a bump out. But when we actually talked to the neighbors, they wanted us to slow down traffic. But when we said this is the solution, they said, well, we don't want that solution, so we'd rather you just don't do anything at all, kind of thing. So rather than just place this on file, I want to go back to the neighbors, see if we can get some sort of consensus. And if we do get the consensus that most of the neighborhood wants to move forward, then we'll evaluate what options we have, if that makes sense.
Mr. Chairman, if I may. I appreciate the concerns relative to traffic. However, in this case, where they have a separate sidewalk, which has a green buffer of over 6 feet between the roadway and the sidewalk, I would encourage us to wait until investments are being made in that roadway anyway, and not create the expectation that we're going to be moving forward with something in advance of resources being available. We are, as you know, in a very tight budget situation, and we have a lot of capital needs throughout the city, and I would hate to create the expectation that something was going to be done sooner without, having it in the queue in the manner that's logical. There could be potential water work that needs to be done in that area, and if we were doing utility work out there, we could spread the costs across a number of areas of resources. So I would, at this point, I would not be in support of further studying this. I would vote against that.
Erica?
Is there, I guess I wonder how long till something like that happens, because it would be nice to know what they wanted to do. Like, maybe it can't happen right away, but it would be good to know what the plan was, so that when something comes up, it's easier to incorporate, right? Like, if we know we're adding bump outs, we know we're changing, I know it would be hard to change the curb line of the entire road, right? Like, whatever plan it was, if that came up, like, if it was like, oh, we're going to have to do water work out there next week, and it was like, oh, wait, we want to do it, like, it's too late to add that to the project. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't want to set
if we're doing water work, it's not
urgent,
necessarily done in a.
Yeah.
There are instances where we go out and we do work, on an emergency basis. Given the resources we have available, given the workload that staff has, I'm just speaking for, the department. The committee obviously will vote as they see fit, and we will implement as resources allow.
Why don't we do this if we could, because I didn't notify the residents of Broad Street and give them a chance to come speak again. If we could push this off to a spring meeting and we could decide whether or not to place on file at that time. Would you be amenable to that modification?
I made a motion. It can be voted down. That's fine. All right. I don't know if there was a second.
So I'll take the second, then I comment.
You go ahead, Mark.
I agree with Peter on this because they should be reaching us. We don't reach them. So if they want to bring forth, in the future, great. But I don't think that.
Well, they did have 10 people show up and quite a few
Okay.
signatures. You may not have been at that meeting, but they did.
Oh, yeah, I
to
understand.
us.
Yeah, I understand that.
So I think I would prefer to at least give them the chance to come speak again before we placed on file.
I'm willing to withdraw my motion.
Okay.
And we can put it on the agenda for next month with the expectation that unless something otherwise changes, we'd probably place on file. And I can let them know that when I communicate with them.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Sure. If the second replaced or was willing to take
I
the
did.
motion back.
I second his withdrawal.
Okay, so we'll put this on the next month's agenda,
Yeah.
essentially in the same manner.
We have
Mr.
to-
Chair, I think there needs to be a motion to that effect.
I move that we discuss this next month, or however we're supposed to say that.
There's
So-
a table until,
I move that we
It's-
table this till next month
For further discussion?
for further discussion, so we can notify the neighbors?
Yep.
Okay. So you're going to reach out to the neighbors?
Yep.
Okay.
all those in favor?
Wait, no one seconded.
I'll second
Yeah.
it.
Could I add some information first too, as well?
Yes.
As far as the neighbors reaching out to us, what they wanted, they did have a survey amongst themselves saying, I think it was a couple of options. One was a all-way stop at the intersection of Gray's Lane, and the other one, I think, was speed bumps, whether or not they wanted to look at those. But the options that they've requested, we've looked at those, and it's not really feasible. They looked at, redoing the traffic signal timing at Miller and South, and that is already optimized. If you adjusted that, then you're going to create other problems at that location. You cannot put a all-way stop at Gray's Lane. That's not allowed by METCD federal standards now. You can't put stop signs in just for the purpose of slowing traffic. Speed bumps, we've run into issues with that, not wanting to do anymore in the city at this point. So it needs to be something else that the neighbors have come up with. So everything they have suggested so far, we can't.
Yeah, so it's good to have the communication between City Councilor Bagley and the neighborhood to keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I may be coming back and saying there is nothing we can do, but I'd prefer to do that ahead of the
Yeah,
vote,
you
so to
let them,
speak.
yeah, you got the dialogue going with them, so let's just keep it going.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed?
At this point, I'm going to hand the meeting off to Erica Wygonick to run. We are on item D, Union Street.
Item D, Union Street. Report back on request for one-way traffic between State Street and Austin Street. Sample motion move to place item on file.
So moved.
Second that?
Second.
Any
I
discussion?
can, sure, I will. We had to wait, this request came in several months back, but we were still under construction on Union Street at that time. So now that the construction is finished for the winter, we went out there and did some video recordings and watched how traffic was operating on Union Street in this section. And what we've seen is that you never have enough cars parked on here, and the street is not that narrow that you have a logjam of cars head to head. It's very rare am I ever seeing traffic coming at each other at the same time. It's usually just one car here, a few minutes later you got another car that way. One time I did see two cars, they just pulled over in an empty parking space and let the other car go through, very, similar to Richards Ave. To make a street one way, you really have to have some overriding reason to do it, rather than just, I think they were concerned about the narrowness of the street, but in this case, narrowing a street is actually good for traffic calming. It slows the speeds occasionally. It's better to keep streets two-way if at all possible for emergency vehicle access, trash trucks, deliveries, ease of access around the neighborhood in the city. So I don't see an arching need here to make this section one-way, and therefore I don't recommend any changes to it at this point.
Anyone else? Can we, all in favor of placing this item on file?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Last year, I didn't have to do anything as vice chair. It was a little easier. All right.
You're in it, honey.
2 Russell Street. I'm glad nothing super controversial is today.
Yeah.
Work out the kinks. 2 Russell Street, an extension of approval of on-street parking and loading zone changes originally granted January 2024 as set forth in the amended plan in the packet. Sample motion moved to renew approval of on-street parking and loading zone changes for the 2 Russell Street project contingent upon the execution of a site review agreement. Changes to take effect when parking spaces and loading zones are ready for public use, and the ordinance will be amended through the annual omnibus. It would be great to get a motion for discussion purposes, because I'd love some background.
Okay. I move that we open this for discussion.
Second.
Okay.
What
so-
do all those words mean? Because some of it doesn't totally make sense.
Yeah, this is an issue that came up because, as when the committee approved this changes last year, it was changes to loading zones and parking spaces on street in relation to this project. And PTS actions are good for 1 year until they become permanent. But because this project never moved forward, didn't break ground, we were never able to implement these changes in the field. And now that year has expired, and it's necessary to come back and renew those approvals so that they will still be able to have these loading zones and parking spaces as we had approved them last year. So it's more just a legal action on the part of the committee in order to keep these actions alive. And now we've worked with the legal department, and that's why all the words are in there, as to when it will become effective. And it's when the site review agreement is in place with the planning department and legal. And will trigger, then these will go into effect. So we don't have to come back a year from now when they're still under construction and renew this again. This will be the final time that we have to approve this.
Thank you for that helpful explanation.
So there aren't any changes to the plan other than the signs that they put in the back roadway there, because part of the approval last time was to work with the city is to come up with bicycle signage, and that has been added to the plan, and additional sharrows on the plan. So that is only changes since the last year.
Thanks.
So these changes were incorporated into the approved site plan? The ones
Yes.
that we had in here, yeah.
Yes.
Any other comments?
I just wondered about, this is Russell Street, and I'm actually talking about Deer Street. As we come around the corner, we were talking about a crosswalk going from the Sheraton parking lot to not Foundry Place, the other place.
Port Walk?
Yes, Portwalk Place. That's not part of this whole picture. Is that separate from original plan?
They will be constructing this, I think you're talking about this crosswalk? This is
Yes.
at Port Walk?
Yes.
They will, as part of this project, they will be constructing this crosswalk with our RFBs.
So we
of
have
the
to wait for
flashing lights.
construction to occur?
Yeah, once
before.
that's done, because they're going to be tying up these sidewalks here for quite a while as part of
Okay.
their, so there won't
Okay.
be a need for this crosswalk, or there won't be many people crossing while
Okay.
this is under construction.
Because I see a lot now.
Yes,
Okay.
but that
Thank you.
parking lot goes
Just
away.
a clarification.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And they should start construction 2-3 months from now.
All right. All in favor of the motion?
Whatever it was.
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Approved.
It's done.
The police crash report.
Certainly, thank you. So for December, closing out the year, total crashes in the city came in at 70. 37 of those 70 were reportable crashes. We had one instance of a motor vehicle crash involving a pedestrian. No instances of motor vehicle versus bicyclists. In total for the year, with respect to bike and pedestrians, there were 4 bike crashes total through the city and 6 pedestrian crashes throughout the year. So.
Okay. Any questions, comments, or concerns about that? Okay, moving on to the speed feedback sign city policy.
Okay, so this was presented at the last meeting in November or December.
Bicycle passing clearance.
It was requested that we make a slight change to this, and we've added the final wording at the bottom of this where the DPW reserves the right on a case-by-case basis to, put in a sign or not put in a sign if it doesn't meet the criteria that we've spelled out in this policy. So it does allow us to, for instance, we could put one on Broad Street even though it doesn't meet these criteria, so. And this is a policy that we'll try to adhere to because we have so many requests for these signs and only a limited number of signs and manpower to go around and change the batteries for all these signs, so.
Does anyone have any questions, comments, or concerns on the policy?
I just had a question. So have all of those signs been changed to indicate just when you're over the speed limit by?
By 5
It's
miles
5.
per hour, yes.
So throughout the city?
Yes.
They've all been changed. Okay, good.
Do you need us to vote to support this? It doesn't look like you're looking for a motion.
It's informational. I mean, if the committee likes to vote on it, they could, but we don't need, not necessary.
I'd recommend that we don't vote because it would kind of set precedent that we're starting to vote on informational items.
Okay.
If people feel it should be voted on, I would recommend that we suggest putting it onto the next agenda as an actual action item.
Yeah. Agree. Okay. Next informational item, bicycle passing clearance.
Oh, okay.
Hopefully that noise isn't,
So there was a request for putting up signs in certain areas of the city, especially around the rail trail, where to inform motorists that they need to provide 3 feet of passing clearance when they're passing a bicycle. And I looked into this with the state. The state already has state law, RSA, in effect that says when at 30 miles an hour, you have to give 3 feet. If the speed limit is 40 miles an hour, you have to provide 4 feet of passing distance. If it's 50, provide 5 feet of passing distance. So we can put up the signs without having to pass any city ordinance for this as well, as long as you want to comply with the state law. If we wanted to have our own passing distance saying we wanted more or less, then we could do more. We couldn't do less than the state. We could pass our own ordinance, but I don't think that's necessary. We can just go out and start putting these signs up where we feel it's necessary to inform motorists of the passing requirements.
great. Questions, comments, concerns?
I would just say that it would make sense to stick with the state law rather than
Yeah.
confusing things and trying to do anything different. I mean,
Yeah.
people pretty much understand that, I think, nowadays, so stick with the.
Yeah, and we can do them on our own on town roads, city roads, but on a state highway like Ocean Road, we do have to work with the state and get their approval. But they've already indicated they're willing to do that.
Great. The parking matrix.
Madam Chair, as the counselor indicated, the parking utilization study has recently been completed and accepted by the City Council. It is posted on the city's website, and attached with the packet today is a summary of the recommendations. The intent is staff will be reviewing these and seeing where appropriate, bringing forward action to address the recommendations. So if there are specific questions, Ben Fletcher is here, Parking Director, can answer anything. If not, we look forward to the next year or so starting to implement these things. And I'd like to acknowledge the participation of the residents that volunteered to participate in this. This was over a year and a half's worth of work, and it was quite a bit of effort reviewing and working through everything from our parking principles to what some of the recommendations are. So it's very much appreciated. And it goes to say also with you all volunteers, it's appreciated for your input. And I know at times staff may feel or come across as being snippy, and it's nothing to do with the lack of appreciation for all that you do volunteering for these committees. So thank you.
Does anyone have any questions, comments, or concerns about the parking utilization study, parking matrix recommendation of parking, matrix of parking recommendations?
Got it. Just have a quick question. So this information goes back to City Council Or what?
It's already gone to City Council.
Okay.
Council has accepted.
this?
Yep, they've accepted, they've approved the report as presented
Okay.
and these recommendations as presented. That doesn't mean anything gets implemented. These are purely recommendations that then have to be evaluated and brought forward.
That's what I was
And-
wondering. What's the
and-
next step?
It would be to evaluate case-by-case basis and decide which one we would start to implement.
Okay. So does that get done at the budget? Where are we at with this?
At this point, it would be done, driven by need opportunistically. If there was hue and cry for a certain action that was on this list, we would start the process going forward. But typically, that would probably initiate from here, for a lot of these types of activities. There is,
Is that
in
what
this
you're saying?
committee, correct? There is the additional parking garage is in the CIP. So that is, assuming that gets passed, it doesn't show as immediate, but it starts the process of starting to research where an appropriate location would be, what other opportunities there are for interim steps to provide additional inventory. So those would be coming forward. That in particular is moving forward.
Okay, so my question was about the monetizing Parrot Avenue lot, and I don't know how I bring this up. I'm opposed to that. So is this coming before?
That would be something that would be initiated in a number of ways. One, it could initiate from here. Two, it could initiate through the fee committee. Three, it could initiate through council action. At this point, there is no one particular actor that's stepping forward. However, I would encourage folks, before they make a decision, whether they're supporting or not supporting an action, to wait for the reviews and the documentation that explains the need and why it's justified.
Okay.
So I would encourage everybody to keep an open mind as these things come forward.
So we just have to be aware of any committees that are discussing this. I'm trying to figure out how we follow the path.
It depends on how it's initiated. Right now, it would have to go before fee committee, and it is not. The fee committee is scheduled for the 13th, I believe, of this month, and I don't believe it's on the agenda for the fee committee. So that's a posted public meeting. It would go to city council to be accepted if it was, and I'm sure there would be further discussion. I do not think somebody's going to be able to monetize the Parrot Ave parking lot without a lot of understanding and a lot of awareness by many, many people.
That's what I'm wondering. How do we find this out? How does the general public get this information? There are, many steps to this.
Yeah, so like all of our programs, we do outreach. We do, there's notices in the city's newsletter. There's postings relative to public meetings. If and when that occurs, those are all the venues, all the areas that would happen. So, I understand what you're asking, and I would say it's just like any other activity that the city does. It's very well publicized before something like this happens.
Just to clarify.
Yep.
Good, thank you.
But again, I would encourage folks to be open-minded relative to why it may be an appropriate action.
Hint, hint. I
No,
get
I'm
the message.
I'm just saying that folks should be open-minded, and look at the data.
I'll keep my comments to myself. We have a lot of near-term priority things on this list, though, so it's a lot to do. Sorry.
Absolutely. It's great having stuff to do.
I'm sure you were desperate for more things to do.
Erica's waiting for something more.
Yes.
Any more comments about the parking matrix? Okay,
It's a matrix.
it's a matrix. Moving on, any miscellaneous comments? We've got a letter. It was in your packet. Everyone read that? Mm-hmm. And otherwise, I think we're done. Anyone ready to adjourn? Or Eric has a...
One informational item,
Yeah.
Maplewood Ave Bridge will be closing down again. And what is that, the...
April. It'll be probably April for about 2 months.
Yeah. And then when it reopens, it will be one lane, most likely inbound only. And and before it reopens fully in, what, August or end of summer?
Yes.
Yeah. So,
I had a question. Is there a lawsuit pending regarding the stop sign at South, and it's not Mendham, what is the street, on South Street, where there was a question in the
Not that I'm-
November meeting?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so the stop sign hasn't gone up, right? We're still pending
Yeah,
a decision on that?
The legal department, I believe, is in conversation with
Homeowner.
the concerned party.
Okay. Wondering what that status was.
Any other miscellaneous items? Anyone want to move to adjourn?
So moved.
Good job, Erica.
Any second?
Excellent.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay.